Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Five for Breakfast. We're now in our 29th episode of 2025. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, the platinum sponsor of Five for Breakfast. So I'm very excited that we will be in Alaska this week for our regional Fiber Connect workshop in Anchorage on Thursday, July 17th. You know, connectivity challenges are quite different in Alaska from the lower 48. Also, there's virtually no LEO satellite coverage as you get closer to the poles, so there's no easy bailout when you're trying to cover a vast state covered in snow, ice, and water. So we're excited to learn more during our workshop. After Anchorage, we're going to be continuing on the road. In the north, we'll be in Toronto on Tuesday, August 19th. After Toronto, in September, we'll be in Spokane. Then in October, we'll move to Scottsdale. In November, we'll be in Kansas City. Then we'll close out the year in Palm Springs for our premier member meeting on December 8th and 9th. Today on Five for Breakfast, our guest is Alyssa Kenney, the State Broadband and Digital Equity Director for the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, discuss continuing to connect Wisconsin strategies for statewide broadband access. But before I formally introduce today's guest, I'd like to introduce David Norris from the team who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Well, thank you very much, Gary, and thank you everybody who's joined us today. We appreciate it. Before I go over a few logistics, we'd like to once again thank our platinum sponsor, Fiber for Breakfast, Wesco. Now, as participants, please keep in mind you are in listen-only mode today. However, we want to hear from you. To ask a question, please type it into the question box located within the control panel on the side of your screen. We'll host the Q&A session with our panelists at the end of today's presentation. This presentation is also being recorded and will be available on FBA's website within 24 to 48 hours, and you can find that recording in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast option. At the conclusion of the presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a brief feedback survey. If you could take a moment to complete that survey, we appreciate it. We look forward to getting your input. And with that, I will pass things back over to Gary to introduce our panelists and get us started. Gary?
Thanks, David, and good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week on Five for Breakfast, our guests were Robert Carpenter, the Editor-in-Chief for Underground Infrastructure Magazine, and our good friend Mike Render from RVA Market Research, who discussed the critical role of underground construction. You know, both Robert and Mike have decades of experience on this topic, so it's always very interesting to hear their insights and perspectives. So if you missed last week's session, you can go to our website and watch the replay. Today on Five for Breakfast, our guest is Alyssa Kenney, the State Broadband and Digital Equity Director for the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, to discuss continuing to connect Wisconsin strategies for statewide broadband access. Alyssa is the State Broadband and Digital Equity Director for the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. She's been at the commission since 2019. Alyssa manages the talented team that coordinates the BEAD program along with numerous state and federal programs, the Wisconsin MAP, broadband maps, the State Universal Service Fund, and numerous projects and initiatives to support a more connected Wisconsin. Before coming to commission, Alyssa served as the executive director of a digital equity and community technology-focused nonprofit. She serves as the chair of the Wisconsin Educational Communications Board and the Governor Evers designee on the FCC Intergovernmental Advisory Committee. Alyssa is a proud University of Wisconsin-Madison alumni and a longtime Wisconsin resident. She's passionate about solving wicked problems, connecting people to each other, mostly through great broadband. So Alyssa, welcome. And for audience, please type in your questions and go, and we'll get them into the Q&A. So you've been around for a long time. So tell us about, so did you grow up in Madison, or where'd you grow up?
Oh, well, Gary, first, thanks so much for having me and inviting me to be on the show. I've enjoyed watching it, learned a lot from other presenters, so it's a real honor to be here. I am a Vermonter.
Really?
So I am from rural Vermont. I came to school and to go to UW-Madison, and I stayed. So I've been here for, I guess 25 years, maybe even 3 decades. But I've been here for a while. But I like to say cheese and maple syrup run in my blood, because I have gone from very good cheese and maple syrup to even better in Wisconsin.
So, all right, being from Vermont, Mad River or Stowe, which is your?
So
Do you ski?
I worked up, I snowboard, And I worked
Okay.
at Bromley Mountain in southern Vermont
Bromley.
for 5 years. I worked there all through high school. In
Okay.
the,
Yeah, I love Bromley. Yeah, I'm a Mad River guy, but no snowboarders at Mad River.
yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say, I know, I'm not welcome there.
exactly. You got to have duct tape and long skis. But all right. Well, so tell us about Wisconsin. So, it's how is Wisconsin unique when each state broadband director, when we met with Adam Cassidy and NTI, we been really advocating that every state broadband director is the expert in their state. They know every single unserved, underserved location. They know the state's topology. They know the challenges. They know the families they're trying to serve. They know your budget. And so no one's in a better position to be able to determine how best to serve, those unserved and unserved locations. So what are kind of the big challenges that you guys face, and how is Wisconsin? Because I think of Wisconsin kind of flat, but is that really the case?
Um, I suppose if you're a Vermonter, it's a little flat, but Wisconsin has a beautiful driftless region, where the glaciers didn't come and scrape away stuff. And so a lot of rolling hills. We have a lot of the state where you can bury fiber with a teaspoon. It's sandy. We have a whole bunch of the state that has cranberry bogs. We've got a lot of granite bluffs. And we also have a tremendous number. I won't compete with Minnesota, but we have a tremendous number of lakes. And so, the geography, each state has unique geography, and it creates its own both challenges and opportunities for different technologies. But Wisconsin, we have our own challenges here. We've got sort of our little thumb, Door County, that goes up into Lake Michigan, and there's places that are pretty challenging. We also have the Mississippi River on one side, where you've got the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers, and you've got railroads, and you have a river, and you have wildlife refuges. So there's really a lot of unique and beautiful places in our state that have some interesting geographic challenges. Wisconsin, one of the great things about working here is we've had a broadband office since 2014. So we have a team of folks that's good at administering grants. We know how to do it. We know how to evaluate them. We know how to administer them. We know how to hold people who sign grant agreements accountable. So we've been doing broadband grants for a long time. Wisconsin also still has a lot of locations. If you look at other states, we just updated our BEAD maps. We have almost 200,000 locations that are eligible. And so if you look at kind of the BEAD allocation per location, Wisconsin does not have a very much per location compared to other states. And so we really need to bring all the tools to the table and really and bring some public and private dollars to those BEAD dollars to get it done here. 200,000 is a high number.
Well, yeah. So I was a little surprised that when a couple of years ago when they did the allocations, that 18% of your state was unserved or underserved, which seems, for Wisconsin, you think of Wisconsin, highly educated. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking more Madison area, but I just would, and broadband would have been a high priority, and I was surprised that much of the state was unserved or underserved.
Yeah, and so I think one of the reasons that you see sort of the what I would call a slight mismatch in that allocation is we have a lot of underserved locations. Okay. So we have a lot of just adequate broadband, and that's not how the allocation was. The allocation was on the unserved, and right. So we have a lot of people who have not enough. Wisconsin was also one of the states who had a huge RDOF default. Well over 100,000 of our RDOF locations were basically defaulted on. And so that created, so LTD was one of the biggest winners here. And that created a lot of locations that were kind of stuck in between maybe getting funding and maybe not. And that created a gap in funding and sort of an ongoing need. And so now those locations are eligible for BEAD, and the commission has since funded we put ARPA dollars in some of those locations. But that was a huge loss of federal funding and RDOF money that we had hoped would be coming to the state to really connect locations, and ultimately was not awarded.
It seems like, a lot of these federal programs like FCC programs with CAF and RDOF, were good and well intended, but it seems like the ones that really worked were ARPA and capital projects and others where you had a lot more control of how to deploy. Because, RDOF failed because they qualified the bidders after the auction. So it's kind of like not a great thing to do, is to do all your awards and then qualify who actually, and then as you saw, even the ones that did qualify ended up being default, like LTD. So with the benefit of the bargain now, the revised BEAD, did that help you scoop in some RDOF defaults that would have not been able to been eligible?
So in the state of Wisconsin, we are a very data-driven office, so we had been working closely with the FCC, and so we incorporated them all into our challenge. All the defaults happened in advance of our challenge, so all those locations were already in our BEAD process, and we did not have any new ads. So our BEAD locations, we subtracted some related to kind of some updates to the fabric and some new enforceable funding commitments in the state, but we did not add any locations when we updated to get ready for the benefit of the bargain round.
Okay, so you were one of the $1 billion states, right? So you guys got $1.1 billion in BEAD funding. So I would say there's some other states that would say, hey, you guys did pretty well. And if you add the match, that kind of gets you up, if you have a 25% match, that could get you kind of close to 1.8 billion. And I guess back a couple of years ago, you had like 422,000 unserved, underserved locations. So you've kind of worked that down to 200,000, which is still a lot. So how do you feel about, your budget and being able to get, kind of how do you see things playing out? Will you be able to get fiber to the majority of your locations?
I imagine just from sort of the people who have qualified for LOIs and the technologies that they're intending, that we will have a majority fiber. It seems like that's what applicants are interested in building, and that's what applicants have submitted. We have, depending on how you sort of coordinate match, basically between like an average of $5,000 per public, per BEAD per location. And that's, for a lot of locations, that's totally sufficient. But for other locations, that's not enough. I think with the right mix of technology and the right providers coming to the table and competing, we will get very close. The challenge with broadband is it's unregulated. People can build where they want. So it's possible that there's going to be some locations and just nobody wants to build them. We could offer as many BEAD dollars as we want, and we could, but for whatever reason, either the return on investment or just the geography is too challenging, or where their current infrastructure is just impossible. So it is a money problem. More money is helpful, but all the money in the world can't make a private business build where they're not interested in building. And so I think we're going to get really close. I think some additional state dollars would help us get there, and really ensure we get there, and ensure that we get there a little faster and a little better, but BEAD will do it.
So are there any, so you have capital projects, you have ARPA, you have some other stuff. Is there some other money you can cobble together to help get, like you said, help kind of top off your BEAD funding?
So, well, first of all, I just want to sing our office's praises for a second on ARPA. We put our ARPA dollars out the door fast. Our governor allocated $100 million. We opened up the grant round within about 30 days. Providers came in strong, and we're just closing those projects now. And, with ARPA and the state grant round that was done sort of in that 2022, all those projects are coming to close. And we had 68,000 locations that were unserved 2 years ago and are now served. So we're really making big reductions. And we had 163 fiber ads from last year to this year's FCC report. So our state is really that created, we really have our kind of foot on the gas on broadband connectivity. That said, every time we do a project, the remaining locations are harder and more expensive, right? For the most part. So
that's the
we're
nature
always
of the beast, right?
yeah.
Because everybody goes for the lower hanging fruit, and so when you get to the top of the tree, it's gets very, very challenging, right? So that's the kind of the, everybody's like, well, you're halfway there, but it's not. It's a hockey stick, right?
Yes.
So
yeah. But I guess your question was, do we have
is way cheaper. Yeah. So when I talked to Eric, your neighbor at Michigan, they put a lot of their state money into building out fiber middle mile. In other states, have you guys done anything like that to kind of help to reduce the cost of some of these and getting last mile to some of these areas? And
so we have never done any specific middle mile only projects, and a little bit it's because our broadband dollars come in and they have like a specific state statute around them. We frequently, though, have providers come to us with last mile projects where they're letting us know that a big part of this is the future opportunity that the middle mile part of the project is. So we frequently fund projects that might have a pretty low number of last mile locations that they're ultimately connecting, but that the middle mile part of it is really creating a whole bunch of opportunity for an area of the state where there's been. So we don't fund middle mile only, but we fund these sort of combination projects that create a whole bunch of opportunity in the future. And we've seen, again, some of those were funded in 2022 and 2023, and they really create a nice strong backbone for us to be ready for BEAD, because we've put so many of these huge basically fiber loops across counties and across mostly the northern part of the state with those other dollars.
So, on July 4th, President Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and one of the tax provisions is 100% bonus depreciation that will really stimulate private investment in fiber. AT&T immediately came out saying that this bonus depreciation will allow them to deploy an incremental million lines of fiber, million locations of fiber per year. And, I talked to the Wall Street guys, they are anticipating CapEx in fiber to jump up $4 to $5 billion a year because of, fiber uniquely benefits on the way that this 100% bonus depreciation works. Are you seeing anything that might help that some private investment fill in some areas, that as they go to reach kind of maybe more higher income areas, but they might be putting in middle mile facilities or do something that can help it make it easier to get these the hard to reach people?
So I haven't seen anything since the bill was signed. I think to some degree it's, it's one of the unique things about broadband is providers don't have to tell the state where they're going or what their plans are. We often find out about it around the same time as the FCC. I do think, though, we have providers throughout the state of Wisconsin who are really committed to this sort of concept of getting the internet to everybody in the state. And they're looking at how do we stack maybe state dollars, federal dollars, our private investment to really, one, do well for our company, but two, do well for the state, because they really have sort of bought into this message from both local government and from the state that we want everyone in our state connected, and we want them connected to something that's going to work for them for a long time and really get them fully sort of immersed in the next, the digital age and digital society. And so I haven't heard specifically the impact of that bill, probably because it's just too soon and we've been heads down and getting ready for BEAD. But we have heard about providers that are really, they're coming to BEAD with big private match. They're coming with a lot of dollars and we try really hard to only put the amount of public dollars in that's needed. We don't want to just pay for the project. We want to pay for the amount of the project that's needed to make it commercially viable.
So, one of the things with the revisions to BEAD is, the current administration doesn't really are not believers in the non-deployment funds, right? So, part of your title is digital equity, but also in non-deployment funds, those, during the original BEAD program, that middle mile and workforce development were eligible expenses. So do you anticipate that, well, one, are you going to, is that, given the change in, the revisions to being more focused on deployment than non-deployment, do you see more of your money going to deployment? And then how are you going to address is there opportunity to, fund some middle mile and workforce development?
Yeah, so Wisconsin was one of the states that had some non-deployment workforce funds approved in advance of our non-deployment or of our deployment. And so we did have to terminate our workforce contracts after the policy notice came out. And so that was really disappointing because we want those jobs to go to Wisconsin folks, and providing some training through our technical college system felt like a great opportunity to really make sure Wisconsin residents got those jobs. That said, Wisconsin, that was and we felt like making a workforce investment kind of before the deployment dollars would actually keep more jobs for local people and also really reduce the cost overall, right? You have more people trained, you have sort of a better marketplace. And so we thought of it not as sort of additional dollars, but a way to sort of make our deployment dollars go further. As I said, we're a state that's pretty tight with our dollars and locations, so we were not expecting very many deployment dollars. We were hopeful. We've been a state that loved our digital equity plan, and we were hopeful that some of that non-deployment use would go to some of the adoption and the digital skills and the cybersecurity training for residents. That said, I haven't given up hope. I think what's important to say is they don't have the non-deployment guidance out yet. It's not, that some of that's still in statute, and I'm really hopeful that states will get it. But Wisconsin was never, when we do our model of how much deployment we need to do to get this job done, we were expecting very, very little non-deployment dollars, if any. And so for our state, it is not a big loss of funding.
One of the unintended consequences of the revised guidance and the 90-day plus 90-day, 180-day kind of clock is that before states were submitting their final proposals within a year of their, getting their initial proposals approved. And so about now we would have had 17 states that would have been approved for final proposals since the beginning of the year. So they would have started. And so we would have had this nice ramp as we built up to 17 states. Now what we've done is we've gone to a shotgun start because every state and territory, all 56, are under the same 180 days, and boom, it's going to be, right, everybody's off the races on the same time frame. There might be some others like Texas and others that want to look and have a little more time, but for the most part, we're stacking everybody up. And while it's going to change, put supply chain pressures to all of a sudden start at once, I think we can manage that. But the workforce development, I'm very, very concerned about that because it's, being in every place at once when you don't have the workforce there, it's going to be very, very challenging. How are you guys looking at that? Is there another way forward, or?
We felt like we had this good strategy across our technical college and with some industry partnerships and doing some of these trainings to get some more people kind of in the pipeline as deployment projects where, Wisconsin has a different construction season than other states. And so we were, the delayed timing and the everybody at once. I do think we've been talking to providers about BEAD for 2 years now, right? We've been giving them timelines, meeting with them regularly, updating them. I do think the providers that really are sort of rolling up their sleeves and want to do this program, they have their own plans, right? They have been doing their own scaling. They've been doing their own internal training. They've been, working to find sort of partner contractors. Do I think if all states get kind of approved on basically the same day in 2025 or so, that it's going to create some additional sort of market force pressure that no one was really anticipating? Absolutely. It's going to be harder to scoop up those contractors, and it's going to be harder. But I do really believe that people are preparing very well for this. They're getting their supply chain in order. They're getting their workforce. They're scaling their projects.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we can manage our supply chain if, everybody's kind of learned the hard way. And, but again, the workforce, so hopefully we can figure out something with NTI and get the workforce stuff going as soon as possible. We've launched our Optic Path fiber optic technician training nationwide, and Northwoods with you guys and so forth. So, that's been going very, very well. So, okay, let's get to benefit of the bargain. So, previously there was this fiber preference that kind of made life easy, and the statute requires a scalability element. So tell us about how you're thinking about, what a applicant has to do to qualify for a priority broadband project. And obviously it's no brainer if it's fiber, but technically it could be 2 cans in a string if it meets certain criteria. What the kind of any technology will do as long as it meets the statute. So what kind of evidence does a applicant have to bring to the table to be able to be qualified for the priority broadband project?
Sure. So you are right. It does. It was easy before, right? State broadband offices could look at a technology code and we could sort of like put things into paths, and it just, it made sort of our process and our sorting, and it made it really clear. And now there's this huge burden on state broadband offices because now every project, mixed technology, like satellite, things that are new to some of us, right? We in our office have not ever administered a low Earth orbit satellite agreement or, reviewed that. And so now we have to decide at the project level. And so we are a very data-driven team. And so, we're really going to collect as much information as we can. What's the equipment look like? What's the manufacturer? How high is the tower? Where is the tower? How deep is the fiber? How many strands? We're really looking at kind of robust information collection. So people are really not just sort of raising their hand and saying, I promise this does this, but they're really telling us the how it meets the BEAD technical, and then kind of over what timeline it's going to scale for both the BEAD customers, but the non-BEAD customers, because that's sort of the other factors. You need to look at like who all will be on this network that we're paying with public dollars to build, and what will be their needs in 4 years, and what's the ability of the network that was funded with BEAD to scale. And by scale, we're really looking at over time increase the performance, and so largely that means like what can you do for speeds, in a few years after, what would be the cost to upgrade it, and also just what's the, make sure that the network's going to perform for the entire federal interest period as predicted, that if equipment's going to go, out of best use, or that they have a replacement plan. And so we're looking at a ton of information collection and really specifics. We want to, we're data driven. We want to know, where exactly, how deep, how high, how much, what equipment buying it from, how new is it, what power source, what spectrum. We want to collect all the information and have people really commit to us. One, so we can make good determinations on easily scalable, but 2, so we can hold everybody who's in the BEAD program to really high accountability, that if in your application you're promising to, a great service and a great network, that we're going to make sure that that's the great network that you construct before we pay you for your BEAD dollars across all providers, all technologies.
Yeah, so now you guys have to become network engineers, understand the capacity, and no one can just send you marketing, brochures. You have to really understand the network and how it works and how it's provisioned and all that. Yeah, so it adds a lot of complexity. So my hat's off to you and all your colleagues on not only all the hard work you've done over the last 3-4 years in this role, but also how much harder your role is now, and just the grit and determination that you guys have all demonstrated since July, was it June 6th, whenever it was, June 6th, to really, okay, we're going to make this work and we're going to make this the best possible program. So we really appreciate that.
Well, I will say thank you. And I will say, the state broadband office directors, we meet regularly, we kind of support each other. But I will say to any of your members, if you have not given your state broadband office or territory office director a break, you should. It has gotten to be sort of an incrementally much harder job after 2 years of hard work. And so a lot of folks had to see really excellent work that they had been done over time pivot really quick, and to make a decision to kind of comply and fit 2 years worth of work into a summer. And like you said, maybe learn new technologies or spend your bedtime. I normally read summer books in the summer, and instead I am reading like technical specifications at night. It's not how I wanted to do my summer reading this year, but it is. And we're committed to broadband, and we're committed to BEAD being really successful.
Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for sharing what's going on in Wisconsin with our audience. You guys are amazing. You're doing amazing work. And I'm just so impressed with you and all your colleagues. So I told NTI that FBA is going to do everything in its ability to support you guys and try to make this the best possible program. But I know that whatever we're going to do pales in comparison to what you guys are doing on a daily basis. So thank you guys for that.
Thank you. We appreciate the whole team at the broadband office in Wisconsin are all rock stars, and across the state, you've got some of the best, brightest, and smartest people working really hard to bring broadband to folks as fast as we can.
Well, it's going to be amazing. I can't wait till we get everybody connected with fiber. So, Alyssa, thank you so much. We appreciate your leadership, your expertise, your insights, and everything you and your team are doing. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we look forward to getting back together next Wednesday with Garvu Jenja, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Consolidated Communications, to discuss how FFB transforms New England's future with fiber. So you're not going to want to miss that. So thanks, everyone. It's going to be amazing in Anchorage this week, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys next Wednesday.